All right, good evening. I'd like to call the July 16, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I do not have any announcements this evening. Anybody else have anything? Seeing as none, is there anybody here that is not, for any reason, that is not currently on our agenda? Seeing as there's only one person in the audience, I'm going to take that as none. Which brings us to our first item, which is the Eagle Scout project proposal and possible votes. Come on up.
So I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Alex Flynn. I am a Life Scout in Troop 134 here in Douglas, and I got to the point in my scouting career where I'm trying to get my Eagle project done.
Excellent.
And my idea, I dropped it off yesterday. I'm not sure if anybody has an idea of it, but I'll sum it up. For the Civil War monument over in the center of town, to make a flower box exactly similar to what's done to the monument across the street. Make a flower box, three-sided except for the front. You know, the front with the year. Not that side won't be blocked, so you can still get up to it. It'll be three-sided, same width, same lumber as the one over there. Potting soil, perennial flowers come back every year, so nobody's gonna have to go out there whenever they don't want to replant. Then on the outskirts, some fresh mulch, make it look nice, make it look pretty, make it a better honorable monument for those fallen soldiers. And then on top of it, have those flags already there, keep them there in the corners, give them a proper stance, and make it a nicer monument. So I would need the beneficiary of the project. Now the beneficiary would be the wide group. I'm not sure if you remember, but I know my brother did an Eagle project. I recognize your name. He did the bleachers down at Soldiers Field.
Okay.
So,
very good.
So for his beneficiary, it was like Douglas Sports Association or whatever it was. And then you were the representative.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who would be the representative for this project.
The whole board. The whole board. The Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you would all agree to it and think it should be done, then I would really appreciate it if
Do we need a vote?
this could be signed.
We would need a vote. I did have a quick question on the flags, though.
Yes.
If you're going to have flags out 24 hours, are you going to have lighting on the flags?
We could put a little solar light there, right next to them.
Right.
That would be my
to shine a little light. Yeah, we could.
Unless you guys want to come out at sundown and take them down.
No, we could include a light. We could include some little lights over there. That won't be a problem.
What is your brother up to these days?
He got his CDL license.
Oh, good.
So he's not home yet.
Okay.
He left at 4:30 in the morning. I haven't seen him all day. So
He was up at camp, didn't he? Stop up at the camp this year?
yes, he did. He did
Yep.
go to. He stopped by on Wednesday. He somehow got the day off, but one day off. He still gets up early though.
Yeah, I think that's great. I was just at the monument out front here the other day, stopped, sitting out in the shade on a run, and I thought to myself, this was a really nice project for someone to do, so I think this addition is certainly welcome and appreciated.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, definitely.
I move approval of the project as presented
Second.
by our future Eagle Scout.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good luck, and
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
I
So one-
think he needs somebody to sign.
Yes, I would
so.
need. I would need.
Yeah, we're gonna circulate that around.
Who would be the
Start on this end.
I think it's just space for one, right?
There's the project beneficiary, which would be like, and then the representative would be like the individual who would be.
So you want to sign that, Matt?
I'll be the representative, I think. Maybe the chair would sign as the beneficiary. There isn't a lot of room for a lot of signatures here.
So when's your board of review?
That's after the project.
After the project?
Yep.
So how long do you figure it's gonna take you to, from start to finish?
Start to finish, well, we could get all the lumber and, you know, I have a pickup truck. It won't take, it's gonna be nothing to transport it. You know, it's the monument's a 9x9 square, so it's gonna be 3-sided, you know, it's gonna be fairly simple, fairly small, so we can make those, cut those at home, lay them down at the site, screw them together so they don't drift, they don't wobble, they don't roll away, and put them there. So in total, probably not even 3 hours, possibly.
Nice. You gonna try and enlist some of the younger scouts to help?
Sure, we can include.
I recommend Danny. He needs
do all
something to
the
do.
You're gonna give Danny a screw gun?
I would, actually.
Everybody listed in the monument, a casualty, or just be concerned? The monument itself, is every name listed a casualty of the Civil War, or did the people get served?
You can lift it up. No, there's a no, there's a knob.
Find that out.
Other side, should be on the other side. It should be under the
I know there
seat.
There's like quite a few names, there's like 30.
What is it? Quite a variety of names on there.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to turn it or something.
With the population of the
No, I
town
think
was
that does,
probably
that
about
makes it go,
2,000.
that's,
Yeah.
that adjusts the going.
All right,
back.
is that it? Just needed this part for contact info? I don't need to sign anywhere, right?
Maybe you have to like spin it.
There was no space to sign.
Yeah, you just needed the names.
Figure I'm not.
She's gonna, probably not.
You don't know that.
I don't think we sign it until you're done, actually, because I remember from Postman's project.
Yeah, he's practically the
Oh,
same.
yeah.
Yep. Just make sure you got what you need and
Cheap chairs. Just spin them.
That's better. Let's hope it doesn't tip.
Everything good
fall
now,
off
Tim?
now.
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. It's,
Been doing too much planning.
I was feeling a little short.
I understand.
I'll run it through the leaders, and after that, then I'll do it.
awesome.
Thank you very
Could
much.
ask that you send the pictures of the
Yes.
completed project for our website. and- Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 2 is the reconsidered change of officers missing information, Whitinsville Fishing Game.
Yes, I had presented this to you last month and not realizing that the page 2 of the application was missing important information like social security numbers and dates of birth. So ABCC sent it back, no action. So they had to refill it out and you have to revote it and then we sent it back.
Okay.
So everything's the same, it's just that the information that was missing has been added.
I move that we accept the change of officers form from the Whitinsville Fishing Game Club as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have to ratify the Inter-Municipal Agreement with Blackstone Valley Veterans Services District and possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, we have an intermunicipal agreement with the lead party being the town of Uxbridge for the provision of veteran services and the administration of veterans benefits. And that filters through in our budget every year. It's basically our share of the cost of what really has been a part-time office. This year, the town of Blackstone asked to join the agreement, and they have a substantial veterans population and a substantial administrative burden. So what happened was the staff has gone to full-time, but the addition of the extra town resulted in no net change to our contribution. So we'll have the same level of service for the same amount of money. So it's really ended up not being terribly complicated at all. They do a very fine job, as we all know, out We have never gotten a complaint in the 2 years I've been here about a check going missing or a check being late or anything, having a hard time reaching anybody. All we've gotten is compliments. We want to thank the office for the high level of service. So at this point, my recommendation would be that you ratify the agreement so we can go forward.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. All right, so discussions of future police station, school campus roadways, and an access off of Martin Road. So, this was actually put on there at my request. As we know that we've been struggling to find a use for the old grammar school, which has been one of our dilemmas. And Chief, you can keep me honest on this, the police department is quickly, I think they've already outgrown their space. I think you guys are crammed in there pretty good.
Running out of room.
And I believe last storm you guys had yet another flood situation that,
Yeah, we have a problem with the drainage pipe out front. It gets all flooded and the water comes in, and then when we get heavy rains or storms like that, we also have a potential that sewer pipe that runs back into the cell areas, from what I'm told, smaller than it should be. So we have had some backup there on numerous occasions, which ended up in a couple of insurance claims. But we're just running out of room at this point. Everything, we use the way back for our record storage. And, we got offices crammed in that small room. We're running out, offices in and of itself. It's just an old building, and I think it's time to start looking at some viable options.
I agree, and I think the efforts that you guys are taking on certification to really professionalize the department, I think part of that would probably help by having your own building. Probably makes ease of use for better records management, things like that.
I think if we started talking about the advantages to having a new building and a separate building, we'd probably be talking all night. And I think the other thing is, while we're fairly close to the center of town where you are, you're kind of tucked away. A little bit difficult for somebody to find, especially in a hurry. And the chairman brought up the issue with the school that we had a committee that we've disbanded, I think, if I'm right.
Yes, the old grammar school committee.
What would we have to do, I'd ask Mr. Wojcik, to do a feasibility study on using the school as the basis for a new police station?
Identify the funding source and ask for the money at town meeting.
So I recall there was a study, I think done by the school department probably 15 years ago, on what it would cost to rent it. And somewhere in my mind is $4 or $6 million to turn it into office space.
The only office space or school space?
School, well, for administration.
Yeah.
It was-
Use it for the district office.
Yeah.
Chief, I should know, and I was going to make a call today, and quite frankly, I forgot. Do we know what Sutton spent on their new station?
I don't know exactly. I know they just said, I can find out for you and get the exact numbers, but I don't even want to guess.
Yeah.
But I can get that information for you.
Thank you.
Would we have a rough shot idea of what a feasibility study would cost? Because I think those come with like a basic architectural layout and plan if we were to move forward with it.
I mean, in my mind, and I don't even know where I'm coming up with the figure, I think that probably in the area of 40 to 50,000. I'd tap into Mr. Wojcik's experience in this and see if I'm way off base.
No, I think that's probably for the level of conceptual design that an architect would do, an identification of the major issues, utility hookups, and the type of usage that is specific to a police station, and weighing the options for that. Yeah, I mean, if 40, 50,000. I'm trying to find a news release, because it
And
shouldn't
looking at that
be that
option
hard
as
to.
opposed to new construction.
I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that we would save some money by rehabbing that building, but I'd certainly like
Yeah, I'd like
somebody with some experience
Yeah, I
to
know.
tell us that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it turned into doing the feasibility survey, it said it's just, it's apples for apples, same money
Right.
to rehab versus net new, then you'd also have to configure or figure out, A, where would the placement be if we were
Right.
gonna build a new building? And then if it wasn't town-owned property, what would the cost be factored in for acquisition of said land?
And there's some non-monetary factors. If you look at where the old school is, right off the center of town.
And the other option could be you razz that building and you start brand new,
What do you do to the building?
demolish it,
Razz it?
razz it.
Rats.
Raise?
Raise, excuse me.
You could razz it, you'll harass it all you want to. Maybe it'll fall down of its own volition.
Huff and puff and see if it goes over.
The new Sutton Police Station was $8.4 million,
Okay.
And I think,
but it's got some features that you might not need.
right, yeah. but-
Well, let's not be too hasty.
Well,
And when we looked back and did our estimates for the new station, I think that's right about where we were.
Right.
A couple of times when we put it into capital, I think we were right around 8.
And that was for a net new building, right?
Right, net new building. And
give it-
honestly, I mean, and that's why I would think you would need somebody coming to take a look at that building and see if it would be even feasible for us to use it as a station.
Right.
The way it may, and, you could get somebody who's, an architect who's gonna tell you it might cost you more to renovate that for a
Yeah.
police department. You might be able to make it offices much more easier than you could make it a police department, because now you're talking, holding cells, you're talking Sally Port, and that's all one standalone building, so.
and Chief, it looks like they rolled a brand-new radio system into,
They did.
yeah, so $725,000.
Right, which was close to $1 million in and of itself.
So a net cost of about 8, do we, I mean, I assume it's not in the article, were they able to get any money back from the state on that?
They got an incentive on the radios, $125,000 grant.
Yeah, I don't think there's a state program for
I
any
don't
building
think so.
other
I
than a
mean, because
school.
we just finished ours in Westport, and we had a cost overrun, ended up at 9.3 million.
It's a beautiful building, though.
It is a beautiful building, but again, it has gable ends and a cupola and things that, if you're really just building a functional space, because that's what you can afford, you might be able to shave off some.
Yeah.
I mean, 8.4 million for 14,000 square feet, that's a pretty high per square foot cost. So there's some features there.
How about the VFW building as a location?
I don't know, I think that you're cramped there for
You
septic.
got the house next door, though, now.
You do, but do you really want people traversing through your police campus to get to soccer?
Probably not.
It's the good access to 16.
It is.
There.
I don't
How
know.
about temporary, anything up here that they can use as until,
Well,
Not without a sprinkler.
Well, it all depends who's going there.
yeah.
I don't know, but we have to investigate this more, whether or not those of us who work in functions where it's office use, we meet with the public is open door, but it is ADA accessible up there, and the question is, if there's no public meeting space, can we get a variance from the fire code? For the second floor. Given that the first floor is sprinkled, and there are multiple means of egress, is that something we'd be able to do with an older building? I don't know. It does seem a shame that we have
Yeah.
all that space, and
Yeah.
it's a friendly working space because it's lots of natural light and adequate.
I think
The
my-
question is, how would you reconfigure? It would still be expensive because you would have to do this floor for the needs of a police department, which wouldn't necessarily be obvious or easy fit to the spaces as they're built out now.
I think the point in as the town grows, the police department and the fire department both are gonna have to grow in staffing. At some point in time, we're gonna hit a point where, we're gonna need to have additional cruisers on, which means more officers on, which means they're taking up more space. I think we're at that critical mass point where it makes sense to get them into their own building. And something that they can grow into. Obviously not something overly extravagant, but, something that will suit their needs. It's clean, it's in good shape, it's new, and it's something that they could grow into.
I think, building on that, there has to be room for expansion, number one. As the town grows, the department grows like every other department in town. But the other thing, there's a timeline to these, and if we were, farther along in the timeline and we were approving a set of plans today, we really can't plan for the police department in 2019. We really have to plan for the police department, say, in 2022, 2023. Because with construction and approval and all the rest of that, you need to be ahead of the game. I think, and it's happened to other towns, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where when the station is open, it's literally obsolete a year later, or it becomes tight a year later.
Well, I think we get into a position a lot, or we have in the past, of playing catch-up.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, the reasoning behind the override, big one was playing catch-up, where we did a lot of deferred maintenance on buildings. I think financially, we're in a better shape now in the means of economic development. I mean, there's definitely new revenue sources that are starting to show up, so I think that we're in a better position. But, I mean, we can't keep hamstringing public safety.
Exactly.
So that was my thoughts of, you know what I mean, I'd roll it into the police station as phase 1, if we did do the feasibility and they said that works. And then phase 2 and 3 would be putting the infrastructure, tying the school campuses together,
Right.
getting the additional access off of Martin Road, which will handle a lot of the logistical problems that are there. And if there's ever a situation, it's going to offer a tactical advantage as well. Those are my thoughts.
Very cogent.
Why, thank you.
Start thinking about putting something together for fall town meeting then?
Yeah, like to get a warrant article, or at least get a cost estimate so we know what we'd be asking
Right.
for. That's the biggest thing.
Can we do that unofficially without committing the town to anything, Mr. Wojcik?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
What, 40 to 50 to study it?
I just want to, that's
Yeah.
my real seat of the pants figure. I mean, I want someone to tell us what they would charge us, so we know what amount of money to ask for.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a little
And
bit
that's
better
not
than-
just limited to this school building.
No.
That would be, just in general, the best place for the police department.
I think that would be part of it. The first step of it would be the feasibility of reusing
Right.
that building. So that way we're not, you know, completely turning our nose up on an asset that's there. And if that doesn't turn out to be feasible, something that we could compare it to and say, okay, for us to renovate the old grammar school would cost $6 million. To build a
Right.
net new one
We don't
next to
have
the fire
anything
station.
in your time or my time, we didn't do that?
I don't recall ever doing
It
that.
was at one point in time, and I would have to check, and you probably will remember once I jog your memory, there was $90,000 at one point that was set aside for a feasibility study for a public safety complex up where in the highway department area where the fire department is
Yeah.
now. However, that was when we were in very tight budgets, and you know where layoffs were getting thrown around. And the reality of it was that we were going to spend $90,000 on something that we knew we weren't going to be able to build within the next 5 years. So it was throwing away $90,000. And I think Chief Foley and Chief Gagne came to the board. They recommended that we take the $90,000 and put it back towards the budget. And I think we went back to town meeting and we did that, allocated it, because it just wasn't a reality. It didn't make sense to spend that $90,000
Right.
for something that wasn't.
Yeah, that was in my time, I remember that. I remember.
Building on what
killing it.
you said, Tim, I mean, I think I'd like to hear first whether or not we can use either the land or the building itself for the school. And if we can, I think we're, number one, we get the side benefit, or we're kind of at the end of the road there anyway. And if it's not cost effective or it just isn't feasible to do, then I think we come back and we try to look at what we need to do to get this done if we can. Probably going to have to start looking at land acquisition and things that we don't have to look at with the school.
Well, plus it gives us the viability if it turns into, we have to do a land acquisition and move it up and do the complex theory up by the fire department. It also gives us foundation to say, okay, well, then that building's gonna get torn down and turned into parking.
Right.
Or something. As much as it's, you know, a shame, it's a building, it's got good, you know, it's got a good skeleton to it, but if we can't use it for, have a viable use for the town, we exhausted every resource possible to
Right.
try and sell it or find another
Exactly.
viable use. So I think if it doesn't work for a police station, it would work well as being raised in municipal parking downtown.
I believe one of our colleagues had the idea of $1 a brick, if I
Yes.
remember correctly, yeah.
I can't take credit for the idea, I might have uttered it, but it was the previous town administrator who planted that seed in my head. the debt schedule, where we are with debt rolling off, I think would be helpful in any discussion moving forward. It's not that long ago, we passed an override, but it wasn't even, a couple months where you explained to us that 2021, 2022 looks like it's difficult budgeting for us, so I just want to take a big look at it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
That does make sense.
But that's all I had on it. I don't think we need to do any votes. We just have some research that needs to come back so we understand the cost and figure out where we're going from there.
I would say we did have a committee that met numerous times on this issue, and I wonder, in the minutes or recollections, what,
That's right, good. We may have some cost estimates.
yeah, or even discussions that
Yeah.
either we're in favor of or ruling against the police department over there.
I think towards the tail end of it, I had talked to their chair, and at that point in time, they were begging for us to just disband the group.
Right.
So, I don't know how far along they got with it.
Is that the school group?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my memory as well.
At one point in time, I know that they were willing to entertain anything. And I think all we ended up coming back with was 40B apartment complex that we had absolutely no appetite for.
Right.
The town clerk should have copies of all their minutes, so I'll ask.
All right. Anybody else got anything on it?
Good.
All right. My favorite one to talk about. The summer schedule. Does anybody have any objections to us dropping down to a single meeting a month? Or is there anything pressing on the near future throughout the rest of the summer that would tell us that we should continue to meet twice a month?
Do we have another meeting scheduled this month?
No.
No. All right, so we're talking August.
Yeah. And would we want to do the first or the third Tuesday in August? The third?
I would think.
I would do the 3rd. If we're up to me.
20th?
Yes.
And skip the
Yeah, that's
6th.
good. People are kind of done with face summer by then.
Yeah. Mr. Hughes?
That works for me.
So we're gonna
Friday,
cancel
no.
the one for the 6th, is that correct?
Yeah. All right. So that concludes our, do we need to vote on that, Matt, or are we just good stating it out loud?
It's always better to take a vote, just because it makes it official.
I move that we only meet on the 3rd Tuesday of August.
I second that.
Skip the first Tuesday's meeting.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Okay, brings us to the minutes.
I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes for June 18, 2019. Taking note of the fact that was the meeting that we appointed Mr. Bonin to the Central Mass Metropolitan Planning Committee.
A wise choice on behalf of the town. I'd second that.
I don't think we could have picked better if we tried.
Well, if we're going to go down that road and have this discussion, I think the record and context should really count for something here. I think the exact quotes were, Mr. Bono was a tremendous mentor, and that I have a passion for planning. I think those should be reflected in the minutes
Okay.
for the archives of Douglas.
Absolutely.
I concur.
We'll put a Tim Bonin Planning Day on the
Passion
schedule.
for planning, was that it?
Yep, passion for
Yes.
planning and a tremendous
Maybe a thank you day.
mentor.
Let's
All right, I
let's
got
do a
it.
Bonin Appreciation Day.
Yeah.
I don't need
Well,
a
he got
day, I
his,
just need to move this meeting along.
Crosswalk boards there, so. I don't
What's
know.
that?
I said he got his crosswalk boards there.
Yeah,
It's
Chief.
true.
Well, let's do this. I'd love an update on our crosswalks.
Crosswalks are going well. You may see the one in front of the extra mile, they asked us if they could remove that because the parking was getting a little tight down there, and it took a couple of hits, and they were concerned about it. But a lot of good feedback on it, a couple of negative comments, but more positive than negative. And I think it's definitely slowing down traffic through the center of town, especially in the area of the crosswalk. So they're doing what we wanted it to do.
I'll confess, I bumped that crosswalk sign
Uh-oh.
once.
No,
You did too?
But
I did not, but figures that Kevin.
My fault.
I'm glad to hear.
apologize.
That's great.
I'll consider that a confession.
It was a confession.
Miranda reply?
No.
It's okay.
They still have the executive session minutes.
Well, we didn't vote on these yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You made the motion. Are we waiting on a second?
Dave?
That's all right.
Dave
Joyce.
seconded it?
I seconded it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain for the purpose of abstaining.
And then I'll move that we approve the executive session minutes for June 4th, 2019. And I believe we want to retain those minutes.
I think so. I would second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 I'll abstain.
For the purpose of abstaining. Your report, sir?
My wife reports that they've, quote, turned the scoreboard off at my son's playoff game, so I guess it didn't go well.
I'm very sorry for your
Is
loss.
there a mercy rule? Is that what
It
it is?
was mercifully ended.
That's ever a good sign when they turn off the
They
scoreboard.
turned the scoreboard off. No. In the answer to Selectman Davis's question, the monument is in memory of the men of Douglas who enlisted in the Civil War. And you get a lot of classic Blackstone Valley names.
Yeah.
Baloo,
knows most of
Darling.
them.
You might have.
Chase, I think.
So that's the answer to
Okay.
your Boy Scout question. We are closing the books for fiscal 2019, so it's a very busy time of the year for the finance director. We're collecting all of the trailing invoices that may have existed and beginning the process of the audit. So we've identified a couple areas where we're going to add some extra documentation, but for the most part, it looks like we're on track for a clean year. There are very few trailing invoices, not a lot of complexity to the town's bookkeeping this time through. So it's all, looks like we're on track for a very quick turnaround on the audit. Knock on wood, it's always something you don't want to jinx yourself on.
Maybe we can
Citizens.
help out Oxbridge for a fee.
Well, there's more than one way to saddle somebody with that bill like that. Work is ongoing over at the Cedar St Bridge, so citizens may have noted the presence of surveying crews and engineering crews. That work will be ongoing, and letters will be going out to abutters to the property to explain the process that the town and the state are going through to determine the integrity of the abutment. And part of that process is taking soundings of the pond to make sure that the engineering for the final bridge maintains the level of the pond, doesn't change the water level. So you'll see it's borderline comical, but it's a small rowboat. They go out and they take soundings of this little pond. And all of that will require interaction with the property owners. And it's been a controversial site. I hope we don't have a repeat of any of that, because this is a necessary public safety and transportation issues to replace a bridge that really was designed only to get us to this exact year, I think, and everything past this is gravy in terms of the life of the span of the bridge. So the reminder is that the project is benefiting from a $500,000 grant that the town applied for and was awarded. So a very large share of the project will be retired from the proceeds of the grant, provided we don't have to adjust the abutment. If we have to work on the abutment, it's going to end up being still a majority grant funded, but we'd have to use Chapter 90 funds to finish the project. The building facilities manager, Adam Furno, conducted a mock OSHA inspection of all of our town facilities with the help of Maya. So it wasn't actually OSHA, it was the workplace safety expert from Maya came through. I think we did very well. There's not a lot of things that we need to change to feel confident that we could get through an OSHA inspection. There are some eye washing station issues and some first aid kit issues, but not a lot of problems have been identified by people who are advising us, so it's a very good sign. July 1st was the first day of our existence as a self-insured entity for purposes of health insurance. We understand from the administrator, third-party administrator, that everything has gone very smoothly. Employees received their HSA cards over the weekend, which is 3 weeks earlier than was scheduled. So I think we've had a seamless transition for our employees, and the claims processing has been nice and smooth. Bearing in mind that we have a high deductible plan, so we don't generate a lot of claims right away after July 1st, and people are eating through their deductible. There were still 344 claims processed in the first week
Wow.
of the existence. So between Dudley, Charlton, the town of Webster, and the town of Douglas, there were that many claims processed. So it's an interesting little factoid. We are trying to come into a position where we can apply for GFOA designation this year for our budget process. And there are really two things that are outstanding. One is a capital plan, and I finished a streets database, so we have more information about all of our individual roadways in one place than I think we've ever had. I never found anything that had all of the snowplow routes, the fire district designations, the bus routes, everything mapped to individual streets. And so we can analyze usage and, you know, customer satisfaction with our roadway network. What we have to add now is a pavement study, and it's taken a little bit longer than I anticipated to get that procurement processed, but we've been buying other things. The ambulance, the cruisers, and other things had to be taken care of first because there's lead time associated with them. I'm confident that the pavement study will come back section by section on the longer roads. So what we'll have is a very detailed database at that point on what the critical areas are to focus paving efforts going forward. All of that's part of the capital plan that right now the schedule calls for presenting that to the Capital Improvement Committee in September and trying to wrap up the Capital Committee's work by the end of October, or certainly before the Thanksgiving holiday. So all those figures are done and the budget process isn't sullied by multiple meetings, you know, all occurring at the same time, because capital can go first and it doesn't really interrupt the operational budget process. And having said that, the other critical piece that we need, of the 14 elements, that we need a capital improvement plan, we need a budget process, or a roadmap. Almost just imagine a graphic on the website that explains to taxpayers where we are in the process and how we're going to get there. I submitted through Gene a schedule to the FinCom for their review that has us beginning the budget process somewhat earlier in terms of those things that are fixed costs, but we're still never really going to be able to nail down a budget document until March, because we have numerous vendors that are very large accounts, our insurance accounts in particular, where we don't get the information until March, no matter what we do. So personnel and some of our fixed costs, you know, our expenses, we can parse through all of that, but we also need to pay careful attention, I think, this year to revenue planning, and actually maybe taking 2 sessions of the FinCom to really nail down the revenue plan going forward, especially if there's economic development in the pipeline. You want to know when that's going to come online and how it's going to be accommodated into the budget. The last thing I had from my update is a cannabis grow discussion has been on and off again of the agenda of this board, and I just want to make sure that people understand that the project proponent does not wish to publicly present that proposal until there is a real there, until there's all the elements of seriousness of purpose can be demonstrated. So a purchase and sales agreement on the land, artist's conception of how the building layout would be, and, you know, preliminary discussion of timeline and everything else. I think at this point we understand that we're ruling out a 2019 build, that if anything is approved, it wouldn't even begin to start till calendar 2020, just because of the tightness of the time frame. And The better part of wisdom seems to be that regulatory permitting can take a while, so they'll start the process right away and dual track the discussion with the town and its people with a permitting process that could take a very long time. They don't want to do one and then the other because it would just take forever. They can do both at the same time. As we all know, nothing matters until you have a license from the Cannabis Control Commission. Without that license, you can't do anything. So that project proponent has some homework to do, and making sure that the configuration that they desire is actually acceptable to the CCC.
Any idea of the time frame for putting the property into agreement? Close or?
My understanding is documents have been exchanged on the purchase and sale.
All right.
And they've made a lot of progress there,
Okay.
because that's almost, at this point, is the easy part. I think the more challenging conversation is MEPA compliance and the host community agreement with the town.
Site control's critical, but it's easy.
Yeah. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, do we have any old business? Seeing as none. New business, kind of fresh on the heels of your administrator's report. First of all, I want to give some props to Mr. Monerick and the level of effort and the work that he's done, because I think without his due diligence, we wouldn't be sitting where we are with a lot of these, very viable projects sitting in our pipeline. And I definitely want to thank him for his hard work and the dedication he's been doing into it. And it kind of...
And the other people on the board too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's kind of been the face of it. And I know he's done a lot of the homework and research. And it's one of those things that, as we start moving through and looking at us growing as a town, it kind of almost makes sense to maybe start discussions of maybe hiring Mr. Monerick as a consultant or some kind of a position to where that would be his full-time job of, bird dogging out opportunities like this, spending the time, putting the coordinations together, doing the meetings, and reporting into either Mr. Wojcik or the board themselves. But I think it almost makes sense that we have to spend a little bit of money to continue to make money. And I think that hiring economic development personnel, that obviously right now he's got a good track record, and he seems to have an extensive network of people, would almost make sense to consider doing that.
Yeah.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Just digesting it now, and maybe after the first project comes in and we've got some new additional monies. But I'm just thinking out loud, I'd have to really think about that. And a lot of committees are providing good service, this board being one of them, to the town. And as you know, our reimbursement is not grand, literally, and
We do it for the love of the game.
well, that's what I'm saying is, everyone enters this building as a volunteer, and this changes that dynamic a little bit, but worthy of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely think it rates further discussion, but I think it's a little bit different than an elected or an appointed position. I mean, the Economic Development Committee, they do some good things. This would be more asking someone to genuinely drive revenue for the town. So it's almost like hiring an independent consultant for almost a sales base if you're looking at it in the business world.
We did have that position at one point that was, I don't know if it was entirely funded by the state because of we had the priority development program, and we had funds in that. I think we had a couple $100,000, and part of it was used for the salary of, I can't think of the woman's name that we had.
Catherine Welch.
Catherine.
That's it.
I mean, we're throwing money at WBDC, right? So we're not opposed to spending money on economic development. Maybe an individual accountable to us produces different, more favorable results.
Well, yeah, and he's dedicated to us. He doesn't have, 15 other communities that he's trying to satisfy.
I think particularly, as Tim said, if this project is moving along, they have the property under agreement, and then if he was on board, he could help moving that to reality. helping or assisting as best he can, so. Just, I think we need something a little more concrete as to what's going on to point to. We've got some chestnuts that are cooking in here, and we're gonna help it along.
Well, I wasn't necessarily saying do it right
Yeah,
now, but I
right.
think it's something that we should consider. And obviously, you know, to the point, if, as this project comes along more, it may justify
Yeah.
the position a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Anybody else, any new business? No? All right, so I would be looking for,
Oh, who's gonna judge the blueberry pie contest?
Oh, I signed up.
you signed
You
up?
got that?
Are
Okay.
you on that, Al? Are you gonna go do that or what?
What if it's a tie? Better to have one dictator doing it rather than two people. No, I didn't mean he's a dictator, but it's better to
Hey,
have
I'll take that.
It kind of sounded like it.
And I'm a passion for planning and exemplary.
As much as I like,
Blueberry pie.
you get ice cream with the pie too, or
I
is
think it
just
all
neat?
depends on the presentation.
I was
and-
telling my wife I'd have to bring my own ice cream to make, because I'm not having blueberry pie without ice cream.
Well, it's
on it.
all about the ice cream with you, Hal.
Yeah,
You
I
know
would
this.
think the contestant would know that and would make arrangements for
To bring
this.
their own ice
Yeah.
cream?
Right.
Points if it's homemade.
So, I think I'm looking for one of your famous motions at this point, Mr. Bona.
I have carried this meeting, I know, but I will, I will finish it.
It's like a planning meeting when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are getting a sneak peek at the action. I'd make a motion that we move into executive session for the purposes of litigation and disposition on real property, and then to leave that executive session for the purpose of adjournment.
I'd second that excellently worded motion.
Yeah, it's flawless.
The motion's been flawlessly made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mike Hughes, aye.
Bone and I.
Kevin Morris, aye.
Hal Davis, aye.
Dave Cortez, aye.